7 o'clock. Right, so let's just remind those in attendance. Oh gosh, yeah, that's yours. For those in a physical attendance, can you make sure your electronic devices are muted or on silent? Anyone who's... Oh yeah, we've got a couple of people on remote. Just make sure that your microphones are switched off on your camera. That this meeting will be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting and will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting will be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting will use their SBC or KCC laptop. If you join using a link on the website or a mobile, you may not be possible to identify you, but I don't think that applies. Okay. Welcome everyone to this evening's Economy and Property Committee meeting, and any visiting members, as well as public and obviously the officers. Tonight we've got in attendance Head of Place, Joanne Johnson. We've got Strategic Programmes and Asset Manager, Kieran Mansfield. And from Democratic Services, we've got Philippa Richardson. There's no fire drill tonight, so if you hear the alarm, please drag me out with you. Leave via the fire exits, don't use the lift, and assemble outside. Does anyone need any assistance? Don't think so. No, lovely. Apologies for absence. I've got Mark Tucker, who unfortunately has been held up with work. Have we got any others?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Sarah Stephen, who is substituted by Councillor Derek Cornell, and from Councillor Roger Clark. And just to say that Councillor Mark Tucker and Councillor Elliot Jays are online. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Right, let's have a look at the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of December 2024. That's minute numbers 507 to 517. Are they a correct record? Does everyone agree? Yeah, agreed. Everyone agreed. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest for any of the items on the agenda tonight? No? Great. Thank you. Okay, let's go straight on. Oh, you want me to sign it? I'll sign these. I'll sign these afterwards before we go. Right, let's go on to the agenda tonight then. That's the disposals and community asset transfer policies. So, is that over to you, Kieran, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is further to a report that came to this committee in July last year, where the committee approved a consultation document to go out in respect of new policies for disposal of property assets, and as a subset of that, a community asset transfers. The consultation took place over an 8-week period, concluding in October of last year. We had a number of responses, and I've tried in the report to summarise the substantive points that were raised through the consultation and that didn't relate to kind of specific assets, because we gave people the opportunity to see our mapping layer that related to assets we own. So we had some inquiries on the back of that. So the three kind of substantial points that came forward were around the involvement of town and parish councils in respect of disposals, and involving them in when the council is considering disposal more overtly, and there was some suggestion of, had them having an opportunity to consider a property asset that the council may be seeking to dispose of. So we have tried to build that into, we have built that into the disposal policy around the community impact assessment, which would be involving them at that early stage when a community impact assessment is undertaken on the disposal, which would give them an opportunity to provide local intelligence and thoughts, but also would be kind of if you like, a notification that was something that was being considered, and so that the parish or town councils could have a think about whether it is something they would be interested in. Second one was around considering the heritage and aesthetic value of assets, which wasn't explicitly in the policy, so we have included that. And thirdly, points were raised around the need for effective follow-up on community asset transfers. So we strengthened the section on monitoring and evaluation in the community asset transfer. In further discussion with members, a further point was raised on relation to community asset transfers, where there was a risk that when groups have come forward and indicated an interest, that it could effectively go on for some time. It can be a long process. And so what we've done is added into the process what we describe in the draft policy at the moment as a usual 12-month period from that approach to full business plan, and that gives a council the period of time where it knows it's going to be in discussion, and that it will be usual at the end of that 12-month period, if nothing has come forward, for the council to consider its position in respect of that asset and whether it should continue to be considered for community asset transfer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, has anyone got any questions they want to ask? Sorry, Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. One comment, page 12. I think you've done a bit of cut and pasting and it doesn't make grammatical sense. The second paragraph, these considerations and will be recorded. So something's missing, or there's something extra. The other thing is a question, Kieran. Fountain Street. I see it's not with the auctioneer anymore. Any idea what's happening with it?
I can say, well, I do know what's happening with it. I'm not sure whether I can say in open session or not.
But something is happening.
Yes.
Oh, that's the important thing. It's not just sitting there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just pick up on a couple of points on the report. There's a couple of typos on page 5, 1.2, and on page 8, 8.2. It states 24th of July 2024. That was in fact full council night. Our meeting was on the 23rd.
I think you noted that. Okay, anything else? That's all. Okay. Right. I'm happy to propose it. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Well, let's have a look. Hayden, Councillor Braun. Oh, okay, that's fine. Yep, that's noted. Okay. Yep.
I was just going to come back to Councillor Kavanagh's point.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything to add in. I think I've left a then and a now in. I need to take the now out, just to clarify.
Okay.
That.
Just so it makes sense. Right, lovely. Okay, right, we'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? Any abstentions? Anyone against? Okay, unanimous. Right, thank you. Right. Right, let's go. Item 6, land at Great East Hall. Who's going to introduce that? Kieran again.
Evening, members. So this again relates to a previous committee decision somewhat longer ago, back in March 2023, in relation to a piece of land located at Great East Hall, adjacent to the Lakeview Village Hall. That's identified on Appendix 1 of the report. Go to my notes, sorry, it's get complicated. So the land had previously been, back in the midst of time, 2004, Section 106 agreement, the land had previously been identified for open space and multi-use games area, which would then come to the council. That wasn't taken forward, and through discussions with the then ward member, there was the possibility of the land being transferred to the council. It's circa 2 acres, and in the March 23 report to the committee, at the committee, members approved the in principle us taking the transfer of that land, and the same committee also in principle agreed to set aside a small percentage of that site to support efforts that were had begun around the possibility of a community shop, which was really driven by the ward member looking at the concerns of local residents in respect of a lack of local amenity that had come forward on the development. There were conditions attached to that that the committee set, which was that there should be a full business plan provided for the council to consider for both the construction and the operation of a community shop, and that if that hadn't been received by the autumn of last year, then the council, that a report should come back to this committee. And that is really what this report does. It sets out some of the issues we are currently facing in terms of ongoing issues, in terms of securing the transfer of the land, sets out some of the limited lack of progress that's been made in respect of meeting the conditions that the committee set, and also some of the changing context in the area with uncertain but the possibility of commercial of commercial interest bringing forward a potential retail offer. The wider use of the land was still an open question and would be subject to a further report. As part of the run up to this committee, I've been in dialogue with the relevant local ward members, and they are supportive of the current recommendation, which is that we do, given the position with the land and the need to still secure it in terms of the transfer, and to leave the door open for the possibility of a community shop, albeit in these changing circumstances, that we leave the door open for a further 12 months for the position to be reviewed at that point.
Thank you. I think there's a member who wants to speak on this. Councillor last.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to thank Kieran for his time to briefing me and Carrie, Councillor Pollard, the other day about what the ins and outs is going on with this piece of land. I'm still quite sad that we haven't seemed to have moved very much further on, 12 months on, and I do think that the developer is dragging their feet. An element, I do understand that the site we're talking about has bigger issues in that it's not careful, it's not actually defined. It's part of a bigger title. There's charges against it. There are outages. There's lots of technical things involved in bringing this land to our use. But I just feel like the developer is using it as a carrot, as a way of saying, look, we'll give you this, if you allow us to do other things. And I really think that we should be fighting to get this land moved into the council's ownership as soon as possible. There is a mention that there could be a commercial opportunity now developed by the developer. It doesn't mean we don't need the land, and it doesn't mean we can't use that land for alternative purposes, because we could obviously work with third-party stakeholders, such as, and things that we've talked about, me and Kerry have talked about, are things such as a nursery, a creche, a doctor's surgery, a pharmacy, and even putting an ambulance station on there, because some of the horrendous times that takes to get emergency services into that area is quite disgusting, to be quite honest. So that's what I really want to say, is that we've got to push to nudge the developer into moving a bit faster, and both councillors, myself and Kerry, will be quite happy to help nudge those developers if needed, if we need contact, if we need to push that in some way. That's the sort of main thing I want to say. The second thing I've had to say really is, can this not be dealt with under delegated powers, i.e. between officers and yourself and the ward councillors, and we manage it and look at it and manage it going forward? Obviously, if there are issues, if there are things that need to come back to this committee, we'd have flagged that up and raised that. It's just that I see on the forward plan it's due back next year. Well, will we have moved very much further 12 months on? So I just wondered if we could actually manage this project under delegated powers.
Okay, Councillor Thompson. I'll let you think that through.
Yeah, I'm just reading through it. I don't know the area very well, but it feels to me outline planning's been given for houses. and then a possibility of a conflict for retail. But I agree with Councillor Last, the use of it could be really good. Also, we could put conditions on the outline, which could then give control for the piece of land, or better control. And I feel that it'd be good to have community-based outlets that offer locally produced products, and sometimes that needs a bit of help anyway. So I don't know the full ins and outs of the project, but I just think I agree with Councillor Last. If we can move it forward and get it to happen somehow, I don't know how we can lever the developer in question. But
Okay, Kieran, over to you.
I hear what Councillor Last is saying. Absolutely, they can be challenging in terms of moving things forward, and there are significant legal barriers which we really do need the developer to deal with themselves, because the flip side of us trying to deal with them is that it would be more problematic for us, and secondly would become legally extremely expensive quite quickly, I suspect. The point around developing the project, I think that was something, as we get greater certainty of the site, I think that is something we would seek to certainly work with, as officers, work with the ward members on, in terms of the discussions about how that brings forward, and indeed how the ward members engage back into the community, so we have the community input into that process. And I'm not quite sure here and now what the final report to this. I think there would need to be a report to this committee in terms of the final transfer and then the subsequent use of the land. But I would hope that we've done a lot of the hard work, so that it's a well-informed report that comes to the committee that's been informed by the local community, and then we take it forward in that way. So I think we want to continue to be collaborative and work with the ward members, and in turn the community through them.
I'm just thinking aloud here, and you can shoot me down in flames, but maybe on item 2, that any transfer of land to support the development of community shop remains subject to meeting the previous conditions set by the committee on the 8th of March 2023, or any other use in agreement with the ward members and chair of the committee, to help move that forward, to broaden that, so that you've got the scope then in discussion with us. Would that work for you, Councillor Last?
All I was going to come back and say 2 points is we're here to help.
Yeah.
We want to move this on.
Yeah.
And basically it's for the residents of Great East Hall. That area, although I've only been the councillor for a couple of years, that area has been let down left, right and centre over the years, and it's about time we've got some stuff or some facilities in that area for those residents, and that's where I'm coming from.
So if I can make an observation there, because obviously there was a previous member who was obviously quite vocal on that, and that it was that particular use, and I think if we broaden it out with that amendment, if you want to second it, then it gives you wider scope to look at a broader angle to bring something forwards in that time frame, because at the moment it is just tied to the conditionality of that retail, and if that falls away for whatever reason, you can't then bring forward another idea without coming back to committee. So if you're happy with that, you're going to second that. Oh, hold on, Councillor Wise.
No, thank you, Chair. I am very much in support of that, because what I really wanted to, I do know this area very well, and the key thing to follow on from what Councillor Last said is that something is delivered that's viable for this site. So I'm not saying that it should be one thing or another. And, as you've outlined, there's so much that needs to go on in the background to this. And I think it's right that the officers and ward members work really closely with you as chair as well, to make sure that is worked up before it comes back here on the whatever movement you get with the developers, hopefully sooner rather than later. But the really important thing is that we do give the support to the ward councillors to be able to have that ongoing engagement with residents, to really work out what it is that they would want to get that maximises the possibility from here to something that's sustainable and isn't something that there's regret about at a later opportunity, or that it feels like a further missed opportunity. So I'm totally in support of broadening that out to just give all the possibilities for the ward members to really work with the community around what that needs, because that estate needs amenities and they have been let down. So I'm totally in support of that.
Seconder, are you happy to second that, Councillor Last? Hmm? Oh, sorry, you're not on the committee.
I'm happy to second
Councillor
it.
Wise, there you go. Apologies, thank you. Are you happy, Joanne? Do you want to comment on that at all? Hopefully it gives you more scope, is the idea.
Yeah, thank you. So the first recommendation says that the committee wants to reserve the parcel of land for the shop for up to 12 months.
Yep.
Do we need to tweak something so if at the 8-month point ward members feel something else is appropriate, we don't have to wait for the full 12 months, and then we can make the change to the second one as well? So do we need
Yes.
do we need a third recommendation?
So let's have a look. So the economy and property committee extend the time during which the council commits to an appropriate parcel of land for a community shop for a period of up to, well, you've got up to 12 months. You don't want it, it doesn't limit you as such, does it? It only takes you to a maximum 12 months. So if after 8 months we decide to do something else, that's fine.
Yep.
So we just need the amendment on 2, don't we?
Does that work for you?
Yeah? All happy with that? Great. Shall we vote on that? So that's the amendment. Yep. All agreed with the amendment? Yes, that's unanimous. Fabulous. Right. On the substantive, are we happy to vote? Okay. All show? Excellent. Right. Unanimous. Right. That's that dealt with. Thank you. Right. Item 7, 44. Trinity Road, Sheerness, known as the library. Over to Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. So this relates to a property, plan of which is on the appendix. It's in Trinity Road, Sheerness, known as the old library. The building has been vacant for several years. It's been vacant since 2021 and is not currently in a lettable condition. It sits within a wider grouping of council land and property ownerships, including Master's House, the car parking area at Trinity Road, the Age UK building, which is immediately adjacent, so and indeed Trinity Place Gardens. So it sits within a much wider setting of council ownerships, the only part of which along Trinity Road is not owned by the council, apart from the church, is the Water Tower site. The report sets out with some options in terms of the future of the building, and the financial implications or the financial information attached to those options is included in a restricted appendix, which members will have seen. Ultimately, through those options, the report recommends well, I should say go through the options. It's either to dispose of the building as it is, demolition of the building, fund the refurbishment as the council, or retain and maintain the building in its current condition for a fixed period of time. The report recommends that latter option, in part because we are within a changing environment in terms of external funding. It's quite uncertain, but there may be an opportunity at some point within the 18 months that's recommended to pursue some capital external funding, which would assist in terms of refurbishing the building and bring it back into beneficial use rather than losing it. It also, the retention element we felt was important because of its position sitting within this wider set of holdings next to a site which is in terms of the water tower, where there is ongoing uncertainty about how that comes forward, and it gives us as big a stake as we can have in that area of Sheerness Town Centre in terms of whatever happens next. I think that's all I wanted to say, Chair.
So members, is there anyone who wants to discuss what's on the blue paper? Because if you do, we'll go into private session.
Chair, I don't know whether it's whether it will come under blue paper, but one of the options is to for the council to bring it back into use. Do we have an estimation of what we might need to find in external funding to do that?
I think it's in the blue paper, isn't it? It's all in the blue paper. So the numbers are in there.
Thank you, Chair. Without discussing the blue paper, this is a difficult one. It's an area that, has got a lot of land, and it's an area that could be great. But I would like to know, on the blue paper, but not relevant to the blue paper, the parts about the flood zone, I don't think matter. Sheerness is a flood zone. If that property is in danger, my house that I live in is long damaged. And also the fact there are 2 public car parks right there, even if the land itself may not have one.
So just for clarity, does anyone want to discuss a blue paper item? No, right, okay. Then what we'll do is, if you want to ask questions, and then we'll get into the debate, if that's okay. So is there anyone who wants to ask questions at this point? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, why wouldn't we at this point, say, put forward just renting it at a full repairing and insuring lease? So then if someone wanted to use it in its current condition, even if it's very low, it means then we're not having the grief of paying out and keeping out, characters that aren't meant to be there.
The building itself is not in a lettable condition, so any approaches would mean that the organisation would need to be able to demonstrate that they could bring the property to a lettable condition, which comes with the cost which is set out in the appendix. We have had approaches of the building, but those organisations are not in that position. But if an organisation or individual came forward with the resource, then that would be something we would actively seek to encourage and work on and see if that were possible.
Can I reply, Chair? It's only that having had similar properties is that you can end up with someone that hasn't, because they don't know about it, that has completely obscure things that we don't think would be usable in those spaces. But even if it's a very low rent, it would mean then we haven't got the responsibility of it and they maintain it. Quite often happens in central London and things like that. So I wondered if there's any merit in just offering that out. Is the roof okay, or is it completely unwatertight, for instance?
I mean, there are basic services missing. So the property was put forward when we went out on Master's House, and there was very limited interest in it at that point. So I hear what you're saying. We could in theory go out and see what happens in terms of interest. Recent history tells us that that interest isn't there. The resources involved are such that I think it would be very unlikely that someone would be in that position to come forward at this stage.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Obviously, subject to planning permissions, are there any covenants or restrictions on what the building could be used for?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So, and to come back on Councillor Braun's point, is that obviously Sheerness is a flood risk, and anything on the ground floor, because we did look at it, whether it was at one point, didn't we, whether we could use it for emergency accommodation, etc. But because a substantial chunk of the building is ground floor and only a small is on the upper section, so the most of your ground floor, or most of the space, is on the ground floor, and it would be deemed as flood risk. So you can't have residential accommodation on the ground floor in a new conversion there. Yeah, if you're existing, then it's different. So, yeah. But anyway, right. Into the debate. I'll propose this, and then if I've got a seconder, and then we'll move into the debate. Councillor Braun. Seconder. Would you like to carry on speaking?
No, I mean, that's pretty much all right.
Yeah. I think it's frustrating, the state of the neighbouring building, and I am concerned that, you know, if it falls down anymore, we're going to end up shelling out for that.
Is that still on the market again at the moment? Because I know that it was listed recently.
I'll let the officer take over here.
Thank you. Yeah, I checked the auction site at the start of this week, and it is still listed as available for auction purchase. Prime residential opportunity in southeast London, I believe.
It begs whether it really is up for sale. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, I've got a lot of ignorance because I don't know the area very well. Is that the large rectangular white building are we discussing now? The one that's not good?
It's the big Victorian water tower.
So
Next door.
what looks like a church,
Yes.
in effect?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's sort of 3 buildings down. And then what's in the white
So
rectangular
there's
building
some
right next
retail
door?
that's attached on the same title as the water tower.
Ah, okay.
Old retail
Okay.
units.
And just so I've got clarity there, I understand Master's House.
Yeah.
What's the section in between the water tower and the retail then?
This is a little roadway into the car park.
Oh, okay. Okay. So none of that
and
is
actually,
owned by
so
us.
if there is a problem with the water tower, and there has been vandalism, but the building's really deteriorated and bits of it fall off, they can potentially fall into the path of the entrance of our car park, which
Right.
is why I'm concerned about the costs, because if we have to take out emergency evasive action to clear up the mess where the building's not being properly looked after, the council can do that, and it can attach it to the title. But at the end of the day, if you know, it could take years to recoup that money.
So I'm still just so I get my head around it all. Where we've got what is the water tower that looks like an old church. Then there's a section of land in between that. Then there's the rectangular white building. Then there's the library. Is that right? The old library, which is a funny little angled shaped building. And none of those sections are owned by us. It was only that I was reading in the report about what we own in a larger
So
circle.
yeah, we own the Help the Aged building on the corner. We
Right.
own the library.
Yeah.
Then there's a gap, which
Yeah.
is the water tower holding. Then
Uh-huh.
there's the entrance to the car park. Then Master's House, and then the garden or park. Yeah, Pigeon Park, as it's commonly known as.
That's the water tower, is that right? And this is this funny little retail thing that's not open.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, okay. So what's that then?
Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, it's just I want to understand. what
We'll
the
send you on
benefits
a-
of value, so-
Yeah.
So
It could, yeah, it could be.
that's fine.
Yeah. So strategically, it's a strategic holding.
Yes, exactly.
We're with the ambition of finding some funding to put it back into use.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
in a summary.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Wise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I support this, albeit that it's none of them really are without some sort of risk to us as a council, especially financially, which we do have to be mindful of. But I think the timescale is appropriate in terms of allowing us to maintain some flexibility, given the work that has gone on in the larger space along there. So, you know, keeping a stake in this so that we could, in an ideal world or even just in a better position, see something come through if we're able to access grant funding or something along those lines, or exploring other sort of creative options, whatever they might be, would be quite helpful. And I suppose the only other thing could have been that, you know, some maps would have been helpful. At least then we can identify where in South East London it is exactly. That would have been quite good. I didn't realise the local government reorganisation had already happened, but there we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I suppose if you go back on the history of what we did with Master's House, in which we refurbished what was quite a decrepit building, but we used that as the equity into the Levelling Up project, and then that's helped us access a much bigger pot of money, and then obviously to finish off the bit we couldn't quite stretch to. So sometimes you have to take a strategic view, and hopefully this is the right one, but you can't tell. We might not be here in 3 years' time, so what the hell. But, you know, we'll try our best. Right, on that cheery note, on recommendations 1 and 2, are we all happy to agree those? Yeah. Is that unanimous? Yep, good. Right, that's lovely. Thank you very much, members. Right, item 8. That is the forward decisions plan. So, do you have any questions on the forward decisions plan? Anything we want to raise? Not particularly. Okay. And do we note it? Can you all note it? Yeah, all noted, nodded. Lovely. We don't have to worry about exclusion of the press and the public. That's it, isn't it? And that one's Trinity. Yes, we're all done. So I can close this meeting at 7:35. Thank you very much, members.